Hey everybody, welcome to Kerbal Space Program Career Mode, where you are now witnessing the launch of my Dres rocket. Yep, today we're going to Dres, and Dres is the 5th planet in the Kerbal star system, located in between Duna and Jewel in an eccentric and inclined orbit. Now what that means is, in order to approach it and get a rendezvous or an encounter with the planet, you are going to need to use the ascending and descending nodes in order to adjust your angle of inclination of your orbit. Hopefully that all makes sense for those of you who don't understand. If it doesn't, please let me know. Get in touch via the comment section and I'll try and explain it a bit better. But for those of you who are in the know, this should be quite a interesting mission, because I don't believe I've ever done a manned Dres mission before. I may have in an earlier series, but I'm not 100% sure. So that being said, it's probably a first. And yeah, here we go. I have edited the video so to cut out some of the fluff, really. It took me a long time to find out how to do the actual encounter. Or not find out how to do it, but actually to get the encounter. A lot of fiddling with the mouse. So yeah, here we are in our launch into orbit phase. I always like to, it's a change I've made actually from earlier videos, where I like to now get into a circular orbit around Kerbin and then launch, because then you can generally launch in the direction of that you're going to be flying in. So if you escape Kerbin's atmosphere, then you can get into orbit around the sun. Now that's where we are now, so we have to burn a huge burn in order to get an encounter with Dres. Now I had to do 2 burns. The good thing is you can set up 2 maneuvers. So the first maneuver was pushing out my apoapsis, and the second maneuver, that purple one I'm clicking on now, is to alter my angle of inclination. So as I said, you need to change the angle in order to match it as close to 0 as possible, which I've edited out of the video. If you need to see it, please let me know and I'll make a video showing it. But yeah, then this is where we are. So on the way to Dres, before you actually encounter it and pulled into its gravity well, you can actually make some alterations using tiny delta V changes in order to get closer, get your periapsis closer to Dres. Now I'm quite happy with that. That's really close. And you saw it only required 0.1 meters per second change. So it's quite useful to do that, because sometimes you can end up being too far away from the planet. To be honest, I'm not sure if it's better to be closer to the planet when you encounter it, so have a closer periapsis or a further out periapsis. I'm not really sure. But what you want to do now, obviously, is once you get to the periapsis, then you can burn retrograde, and it will slow you down and pull you into an orbit. Now, I thought this looks like a good opportunity to get loads of science, so we beam that back. Obviously, we've still got loads of science in orbit around the Kerbal star as well, but we're unable to send it back, transmit it right now. So we need to build like some power packs and send them out. But this mission was really funny, because first of all, for some reason the rocket went haywire. When I tried to EVA and get an EVA report, the rocket just started spinning out of control. So I'm having a big old battle trying to get poor old Jebediah, has to be Jebediah, to use his RCS suit and use the thrust on that to sort of nudge the rocket into some sort of stableness, so that we can actually find the door on it and get back inside. It's just, I don't know if it's a bug in the latest patch of Kerbal, or if I did something wrong. Maybe I left SAS on when I left. Yes, I know what the problem is now. Yeah, the problem was the positioning of these outer fuel tanks. One of them was slightly blocking the door, so as he steps out and pushes away, it nudges the rocket round. Yeah, I remember now. That's a bit of a pain in the bum. That's a little to not do. Put that on your to not do list. Don't put random rocket packs in front of doors, otherwise that will happen. But you live and learn, right? So anyway, then I need to burn, as I said, retrograde quite severely here in order to get into our orbit. And obviously this is a mission where I want to land on the planet. So again, I'm gathering up some more science. Take a little look at the X science module and you can see what's going on. Again, At this stage of the recording, I didn't actually know what the problem was, so I didn't know that if I EVA, it would spin the rocket round. Had I paid a bit closer attention, I would have probably noticed that the fuel tanks are in the way. But there, you can just about see it as it rotates there. The fuel tank aerodynamic cap is kind of blocking the door. So again, we have the problem of trying to get back in our rocket. Otherwise, you know, it's just as well Jeb has enough RCS, otherwise... he's kind of stranded, and I don't think we'd be able to send a rocket out in order to save him, because, yeah, well, you know, Dres is really far away, and it would probably be a year or more of Jeb just floating around in space, going, why can't I get in my bloody rocket? You know, so, anyway, I managed to somehow keep nudging the craft and get it in so I can actually find the door. But, yeah, a bit of a spacecraft design issue there. Anyway, let's talk more about Dres. Dres has 8 biomes, so there's a huge scope for getting loads and loads of science. It doesn't have any atmosphere. In fact, it has the least gravity as well of any planet. So you don't need parachutes to land with any aplomb. You can simply use your rocket thrusters, and the gravity's so low that it doesn't require that much delta V to slow down. Here we go. We're starting to try and think about a landing zone. Now, Dres is very hilly and very mountainous, so finding a level landing spot is not the easiest thing in the world. By the way, yeah, if you want to take off again from Dres, it has an escape velocity of 558 meters per second. So as long as you've got at least 558 meters per second, you can escape back into the orbit of the sun, and then go and rescue any stranded Kerbinauts that you may have. Now let's focus on the landing here. So all you want to do when you're landing is burn retrograde. There's probably a science to it, but I do it by eye. I sort of judge how high I am in terms of my altitude. So you take a look at the top right. It says altitude terrain. That's how high I am above the surface. And then I try to reduce myself to as close to 0 meters per second as I reach an altitude of 0. Obviously, 0.1 meters per second or 0 would be a perfect landing speed. It's quite difficult to attain, but you can see I've got relatively good control over the rocket here. But as we get closer to the surface, you can see the extent of the mountainous terrain. And if I'm going to land here, at this stage, I was thinking, okay, well, if I get out, my rocket may tip over. So let's just slide it down the hill. Thankfully, it has some sort of control. There must be like little caterpillar tracks on the bottom of the legs or something. So I tried to zoom down to this, or propel myself down to the bottom of this hill, because it looks relatively flat down there, and I figure, well, that's going to be a much better landing spot. This is an extraordinary mission. This is the furthest any Kerbinaut, including Jebediah, has been in this playthrough, and I'm really rather excited. I'm also rather excited because I'm using the Outer Planets mod, so eventually we'll be flying to planets some of you may not have seen before, which should be rather exciting. One thing it does do, the Outer Planets mod, is make Elu a moon of another planet. It might be in the Sarnus, in orbit of Sarnus. I'm not quite sure, but we'll find out as we get there. So again, I'm landing here, and it's still mountainous. Now, there is a mod you can get, which I actually have, but I didn't want to launch 2 rockets. Now, that rocket, essentially, that mod allows you to map the terrain so you can actually see where the hills are and properly plan a good landing spot. But I hadn't done it for this. I thought, how difficult can it be to find a flat landing spot? Can't be that difficult, but it was. So again, we do our little bit of power sliding down the hill. Lovely, lovely control being exhibited by Jebediah. You have to admit, he is one of the world's best Kerbinauts. In fact, he is the best Kerbinaut. And finally, we jettison those 2 fuel tanks. A little bit of an explosion there. Jebediah manages to successfully avoid all of that. You can see the little aerodynamic nose cone flipping off in the distance. And once we actually land, you can see the amount of scientific data we can get is quite substantial. I'm not sure if we can actually return with it all. But maybe we can, maybe we can't. But first of all, a good rule of thumb is to just transmit it. Sure, you lose some of the data in the process, but it's a good way of expanding the amount of parts you have by unlocking different parts in the research tree. We can do our little mystery goo observations, Mr. Magoos. We can test the atmospheric pressure data, of which there shouldn't be any, I think, because there's no atmosphere. So I imagine it's just like the vacuum of space once you're on the surface here. Doesn't look too dissimilar to like the Swiss Alps or something with less snow. Anyway, Jebediah tries to EVA, and again, we're off. We're pirouetting across the landscape like a ballerina in the Russian Olympics. It's quite frankly, the skill of Jebediah is incredible. So we need to try and make it stand still again. So we load him back up, and we try and find another landing spot. I particularly find this quite fun. You might find it annoying, I don't know. But it's quite fun just finding out all these little tricks and, you know, getting up to mischief while you're on the planet. What I did want to do, actually, was load up a little tiny rover to bring to a place like this and try and drive that across the surface. But in hindsight, the lack of gravity may be problematic. But if it had more gravity, I imagine that'd be quite good fun. It might be something we'd do on another planet further on in our career mode. But once again, I try and find a nice landing spot where we can actually get out and explore some of the environment without our rocket taking off on its own. There's a little bit more data still to be grabbed. Again, the rocket decides that it's going to go spinning, but this time Jeb's like, whatever, oh god, and he hits the leg and it blows him off into the distance. And Jeb's like, what the fudge, let's reload. Jeb can't cope with disasters like that. And in an alternative parallel universe, obeying the laws of the multiverse theory, we are able to reload, and we try that finding of a flat landing spot again. It's quite difficult to do, to be honest. Managing to keep control and of your descent speed, but we managed to do it. And eventually I realise, alright, well, let's take off SAS. Maybe that's the problem. And I have, it could just be because I'm on a flat surface, but I land and I'm all happy. And I do an EVA report, get 48 science, take a surface sample, plant my flag. I'm like, yeah, what a bloody journey that was. It was fun though. And don't worry, we're not going to be leaving Jeb here on the surface of Dres. We've still got 2,059 meters per second delta V left, so we are able to take off and get back out into orbit of the sun. It is going to be a long while before we're able to get an encounter with Kerbin, so Jeb will have to rotate his way through the galaxy, or through the solar system, for a little while yet. He's probably got some, like, pretzels or something on board that he's eating. Who knows? Maybe a spare tomato has been lodged inside his spacesuit by his mum or something like that. You never know. So anyway, we try and take off. As before, I told you the escape velocity is 558 meters per second, so we should be able to see that here. At least according to the wiki page, anyway. So there we go. I've actually managed to find an escape velocity a little bit slower, 521 meters per second. And off we go into the stratosphere. A successful mission from Jeb, with lots of fun. And yeah, we're going to park him in an orbit. I did mess around with the maneuver nodes trying to find an earlier encounter with Kerbin, but it's going to be a while yet. And you can see we possibly need to adjust our angle of inclination again, but it's not totally necessary. Anyway, thank you ever so much for watching. Please leave a like, and thank you.